Please welcome Pat LaFontaine.
Free to Burridge again, looking for LaFontaine. In front of center score!
There's a chance for Sweeney. Saved by Hasek, a beauty.
Grosek had trouble with the puck, and what a save.
LaFontaine stuffs it in. He scores.
High point for Howard. Tuck in for it. Stop the goal!
There are players who make you work harder. There are players who make you prepare differently. And then there are players who make you question everything you thought you knew about your own ability the moment you step on the same ice as them. Pat LaFontaine was the third kind, not the loudest name from his era, not the most physically imposing player in any room he walked into, but ask the men who actually lined up against him night after night across a decade and a half in the NHL, and you will hear something that goes beyond statistics and highlight reels. You will hear the particular tone of voice that only comes from someone describing something they still have not fully processed. That is what LaFontaine did to people, and it was never an accident. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Before anyone gets into what it felt like to play against him, let us establish what the numbers actually say, because the numbers are the foundation, and the foundation here is extraordinary. Pat LaFontaine finished his career with 468 goals and 545 assists for 1335 assists for a 1313 points. He did that in 865 games. That pace puts him among the most productive players per game in NHL history. But the number that stops every conversation cold is the one from the 1992 to 1993 season. 53 goals, 95 assists, 148 points in 84 games. That season places him in a category of offensive output that only a handful of players in the history of the sport have ever reached, and he did it not as a towering power forward built for physical domination. He did it at 5 feet 10 inches in an era when the NHL was arguably the most physically brutal it has ever been. The size was always the first thing opponents noticed, and it was always the first thing that misled them. Mike Gartner played 19 seasons in the NHL and scored 790 goals. He understood elite offensive players from the inside out. He knew what separated good from dangerous and dangerous from something else entirely. Gartner said that LaFontaine had a quickness that did not register until it was already too late to respond to it, not just skating speed, decision speed. The time between LaFontaine reading a situation and acting on it was shorter than anything Gartner had seen at that level. He said that most players at that speed sacrificed something else. Either the hands got sloppy or the reads got simple. LaFontaine sacrificed nothing. Everything ran at the same elevated pace at the same time, and there was simply no moment in a sequence where you could find the opening to stop him. That is not a description of a skilled hockey player. That is a description of a problem with no clean solution. Pierre Turgeon was one of the elite centers of that same generation. He understood the position from the inside and competed against the best players in the world throughout his career. Turgeon said something about LaFontaine that cuts directly to the core of what made him so difficult to face. He said LaFontaine always knew where he was going before anyone else on the ice knew where he was going. That sounds simple. It is not simple. What Turgeon was describing is a level of anticipation that effectively makes the player operating at it one full move ahead of everyone else on the ice at all times. When you are one move ahead of elite NHL players consistently and not occasionally, that is not instinct. That is a kind of intelligence about the game that exists in only a very small number of people who have ever played it. Opposing coaches in that era made specific tactical decisions before games specifically because of LaFontaine, not general defensive structures designed to handle dangerous forwards as a category. Specific plans designed to handle one player. Mike Keenan coached some of the most dominant teams of that decade and worked with and against the best players in the world throughout his career. Keenan said that preparing for LaFontaine required a different kind of conversation in the film room, because the things that neutralize other dangerous players did not neutralize him the same way. His combination of speed and creativity and hockey sense meant that he found answers to structures that were designed to eliminate the answers. You built a wall, and he found the door in it that you did not know you had left open. That is an uncomfortable thing for a coach to admit. that a player consistently found solutions to problems that were specifically designed with that player in mind. Grant Furr was one of the greatest goaltenders of his era. He faced thousands of shooters across a career that included multiple Stanley Cup championships and a Hall of Fame induction. Furr said that LaFontaine was among the most difficult shooters he faced because of what happened before the shot. The movement before the release, the way he used his body and his positioning to take information away from the goaltender at exactly the moment the goaltender needed that information most. Furr said most elite shooters had a signature, something they returned to under pressure that you could study and prepare for. LaFontaine had signatures, but he could change them mid-sequence in real time based on what you were showing him. Furr said stopping him felt less like executing a prepared response and more like solving something live with incomplete information while the clock was running. Think about what it means when a Hall of Fame goaltender describes a shooter in those terms. It means the preparation never felt like enough, and feeling like your preparation is not enough before a game even starts is one of the most corrosive things that can happen to an elite athlete. Randy Carlyle spent years in the NHL as a player and later as a coach who studied the game at its deepest level. Carlyle described what LaFontaine brought to a building on game nights in terms that go beyond individual matchups. He said there was an energy that came with LaFontaine being on the ice that the entire opposing team felt. Not just the players directly matched against him, everyone, because everyone knew that at any moment, in any sequence, he could change the game entirely, and there was no way to predict exactly when or exactly how. That kind of unpredictability at that level of execution does something to a group of players collectively. It raises the tension inside a team in a way that takes energy. Energy that should be going toward competing goes toward managing the awareness that he is out there somewhere, and the next 30 seconds could go very badly, very quickly. Dale Hawerchuk was himself one of the great offensive players of that generation. He finished his career with 1,409 points. He knew from personal experience what it took to operate at the top of the NHL offensively and what separated the players at that level from everyone below it. Hawerchuk said that LaFontaine had something beyond the physical tools and the hockey sense. He had a competitive desire that was visible from the outside in a way that most elite players kept more internal. You could see it in how he played when the game was close and how he played when it was not. The intensity did not waver based on the scoreboard. It did not waver based on the opposition. It did not waver based on anything external at all. Hawerchuk said that watching that consistently over the course of a game was genuinely difficult for opponents because it communicated something wordlessly, that this man was not going to give you anything. Not one shift. Not one loose puck. Not one moment where you could take something easy. That communication is its own form of pressure, and sustained pressure of that kind over the course of a game wears on people in ways they sometimes do not recognize until after the final buzzer. The 1992 to 1993 season deserves its own examination because it is the single clearest statement LaFontaine ever made about what he was capable of at his absolute peak. The Buffalo Sabres that season were not a team loaded with Hall of Fame talent surrounding him. LaFontaine was not operating in a system built by a dynasty with the best supporting cast money could assemble. He was the center of that team in every sense of the word, and he carried the offensive weight with a consistency that stretched across an entire 84-game season. 148 points in the NHL. In 1993, when teams were built specifically to make that kind of production impossible through physical intimidation and defensive structure, he did it anyway, and he did it in a way that left the people who watched it night after night still searching for a framework to explain it decades later. Pat Quinn coached and managed in the NHL for decades and built a reputation as one of the sharpest hockey minds the sport has ever produced. Quinn said that LaFontaine represented a specific kind of challenge that the sport only produces very rarely. Not a challenge of size or strength or even pure speed as isolated qualities, a challenge of completeness. Every part of the game operated at a level where there was no single weakness to target. No part of his game where a prepared opponent could say that is where we find our advantage and build from there. Quinn said that completeness at that level of intensity was what made him genuinely terrifying in the original meaning of that word. Not fearsome in a physical sense, terrifying in the sense that you could prepare completely and still feel fundamentally uncertain standing across from him. That uncertainty is the fingerprint LaFontaine left on an entire generation of opponents. Not just the goals against, not just the points on the score sheet, the feeling that sat in the chest before warm-ups and did not leave until the final horn. The feeling that you were about to face something that your preparation might not be fully adequate for no matter how thorough it was. LaFontaine himself never spoke about what he did to opposing players in those terms. He spoke about the game, about loving to compete, about finding joy in the details of preparation and execution. He said that for him the work was never separate from the reward, that the process of becoming better and competing harder was the thing itself and everything else followed from it. That mentality does not produce 148 points in one season by accident. It produces them because the person operating it genuinely does not know how to do anything at less than full capacity. And when you meet someone like that across a face-off dot in the NHL, the feeling you take away from that experience has a name. Every legend who faced Pat LaFontaine knows exactly what that name is.